#SAFM Viewpoint.
Okay, so there we are. Because we believe that innovation is so important and innovative thinking is that important. So the thinking, the products, the mindset, the idea to disrupt industries, to try and think of new ways of doing things as opposed to just slight incremental improvements on existing things. And that's the big challenge for our country and every country in the world. So we want to pay attention to just that. So with me is Wendy Mahoney, who's an innovation specialist who heads up Numela Holdings. Wendy, appreciate your time. Hi.
Hello, Ashraf. It's good to be on SAFM with you.
Thank you indeed. Right. So as an innovation specialist, right, one of the things I've picked up from some of the things that you've posted is this, that innovation is not just about technology. It's an interesting point because often many people think innovation means tech. Explain what you mean.
Absolutely. And, words are social constructs, right? So one of the biggest challenges is that innovation is often misconstrued to be technology. And when companies are in this innovation drive at the moment, they are seeking to digitize and they're seeking to transform and they're looking at technological advancements. The challenge, though, is the question they have to ask themselves is, for what purpose? So innovation is very much about what is the value that they are actually adding. Innovation is an idea that you turn into a product or service of value, but the emphasis is on value. Obviously, it needs to be technologically feasible. It must be a viable business model. But again, is that something that your customer is actually wanting or seeking or not? Because otherwise, we chase innovation and technology or digital just for the pure sake of that tool without actually having the value add from it.
All right. And when we then talk about innovation in a show like this, because we want to encourage innovation, is innovation dramatic shifts, or are they just, small shifts in the way we do things?
Well, the fascinating thing is that there are actually many different types of innovation. You can have product innovation, service innovation, business model innovation. There are approximately 10 broad categories of innovation, and there are actually 10 types of innovators. So every person is actually an innovator. You and I are both innovators. We're just different types of innovators. So in terms of your question is, what is innovation? Is it disruptive? Is it incremental? You get less than one, I'd say about less than 1 out of 10 innovations are actually disruptive. Most innovation actually is incremental, or it's building on an existing product or service but doing it differently. For example, an innovation might be the iPod Shuffle, but was it actually innovation? Because it wasn't disruptive in terms of being an invention, because it was the Walkman combined with the phone done in a different manner. So we don't actually realize that very, very little of what's actually construed as innovative is actually invention. It's basically looking at things that are existing and putting them together differently.
And yet now, where you are, the fact that you describe yourself as an innovation specialist, that does suggest that you place huge emphasis on innovation. So why is it that you place that much emphasis on innovation, and who comes to you?
Well, the thing is that, we haven't yet hit the exponential age. So we are embarking on the industrial revolution, which we're calling the exponential age, but we're only actually going to get to the S-curve once we have AI's mainstream, once the Internet of Things is mainstream. The Internet of Things is largely underpinned by 5G technology. So Intel and Ericsson, as far as I'm aware, are embarking on that project at the moment. So once we have 200 billion items connected to the Internet of Things, that's when literally every single environment, every business, life as we know, literally change overnight. So that companies and individuals need to prepare for that shift now. So they need to start looking at how do we do things differently, because if a little bit of time now, if they leave it, it's going to be too late, because they're not going to have the time to be able to adapt. And your biggest companies are your largest hits, so your companies that need to look at shifting their cultures, their beliefs now to to transform, to innovate, to see the world differently are your largest, biggest corporates, because those entities are the hardest to shift overnight.
So if I bring it to the South African scenario, suddenly just about everybody's talking about innovation as a very important tool, very important vehicle for South Africa to be globally competitive. So it's a buzzword, but is it a buzzword where people are saying it without even understanding fully what it means, or does it mean, when we talk about Ubuntu, for example, there's a certain plan when you embrace an Ubuntu lifestyle or ethos, right? Where we therefore talk about an innovation culture. What then do we mean by that?
You're absolutely correct. It's and that is unfortunately the biggest challenge at the moment, is that people don't actually understand the word innovation. And look, when I was lecturing business innovation at Vega, it's for somebody to qualify with a major in business innovation. It's 240 hours of seminal content. So there's a lot of content behind business innovation that people are not fully understanding. There's a lot of systems in terms of thinking systems for innovation, structures, environments. But going back to your question as far as the culture for innovation, what you need to look at is what skills do you need to be able to innovate, and how do you integrate those skills into your staff to be able to shift the culture, which is based on your beliefs and your values, which changes behavior, which changes your results. So your skills could be empathy. Ironically, because empathy, the more I am connected to my stakeholders, the more I feel their pain, the more inspired I am to come up with a solution to their pain, which is then obviously the birthplace for innovation, in solving an existing pain in the marketplace. So ironically, empathy is a skill, for innovation. Diversity is a massive catalyst for innovation, especially inclusive diversity. You could creativity, analytical thinking, creativity, design thinking. Yeah, so there's a broad range of skills that are actually needed to shift the culture.
And I mean, as we wrap up in the next 2-3 minutes, here's the part for people listening in, okay? We all understand there's a need to innovate. We maybe just don't quite get how dramatic it needs to happen, but we understand if we stand still and we don't innovate, we're going to go all the way. We're going to fall backwards. Okay, it's almost like money put in the bank, and inflation beats us to that, right? How do we then train ourselves? Is that where someone like yourself comes in, where you train people like myself and others to think innovation or innovatively around finding solutions to existing problems or even new things that would come up?
Absolutely. And that's what we have specialized in, is training programs specifically for corporates or for individuals that is geared around the transformation required to be able to innovate for profit. So it's the transformation in terms of enabling you to understand both the seminal content behind all the concepts that underpin business innovation, but also what are the skills and how do we inculcate those skills within our belief system? How do we shift and how do we re-alter for innovation? And the biggest thing that I focus on, depending obviously on the duration of training that we do with the corporate, is the value of inclusive diversity. Because the thing is we all see the world differently. We have our own belief systems, our own programming, and if innovation is ideas, the more diversity and the more inclusive diversity you have, you actually have to share ideas which enable you to innovate at a quicker, faster rate. But only when you are inclusive.
Okay. I tell you what, we're losing you because the line is becoming increasingly, it's deteriorating, in fact. So let's leave it at that, Wendy. Excepting perhaps, give me a website address as a starting point, or maybe a social media contact detail that I could direct people to.
Absolutely. So the company site is MEW, yes. And then we have a training platform which is purpose-driven impact, which is an online training platform.
Okay. I tell you what, let's leave it at that. We are losing you, unfortunately, Wendy. Purpose-driven something, I got that. But the important one, Numella Holdings, and you find them on the website. You'll get all the links. Numella spelled NEWMELLA. In fact, I'll get Benzito just to maybe get all the details in the link to the company so we can actually pass people onto Wendy Mahoney. Wendy Mahoney is an innovation specialist. Okay, there's lots of drama going on with our late night drama.